Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second event of the CELOCamp Talk Series. I'm Rachel Jacob, Program Manager at CELOCamp, and here with me on screen is Marek, co-founder and CTO of Celo, and Josh, Developer Relations Engineer at cLabs, who you'll hear from both shortly. Hi, Marek. Hi, Josh.
Hey.
You're welcome. Before we do get started with today's talk, I'd like to briefly speak about CELOCamp and what's ahead. We're currently a week and a half away from the application deadline for our 2-month virtual acceleration program and startup competition, where teams will receive mentorship from industry leaders, business and technological guidance, and a chance to win prizes amounting to 30,000 USD. The focus of CELOCamp is to help startups and developers build sustainable businesses on Celo. So the deadline to apply to CELOCamp is October 5th, and I highly encourage you all to visit celocamp.com for more information and to apply today. So in today's talk, you'll have a chance to ask your questions regarding the Celo platform and how to build on Celo. And towards the end of our session, you'll also hear from Josh on an introduction to Celo developer tools and helpful resources to start building. So definitely stick around for that. I'd also like to note that on the bottom of the screen, there's an Ask a Question tab. You can ask questions there all throughout the talk and also vote on questions you'd like either Marek or Josh to answer. Just to give you a brief background of why we're so lucky to have the opportunity to speak to Marek today. Marek is co-founder and CTO of Celo. He also co-founded a machine learning startup called Loku that spun out of MIT and was later acquired by GoDaddy. At GoDaddy, Marek was VP of engineering, and as a professional researcher, Marek's past work includes work on deterministic multi-threading and transactional memory, for which he received a 2011 Facebook fellowship. He also previously worked at Google, Microsoft Research, and Sun Labs, and received his PhD from MIT. So Marek, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm gonna pass the floor on to you.
Thanks so much. Awesome. Well, it's really great to be here. Hi, everyone. So I figured for this kind of AMA, it might make sense to go through a few quick slides, giving you a quick kind of introduction to Celo, and then we can kind of jump into any questions that people have. So let me just quickly bring that up right now. Give me 1 second. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I think by now, hopefully, you know that Celo is a permissionless platform that makes financial tools accessible to anybody with a mobile phone. And I think, what makes Celo a little, I think, unique in the space, there's a lot of different layer ones out there right now, especially launching this year. I think what makes Celo particularly unique is the full stack approach that it took to kind of developing not just the blockchain, but the Celo SDK that the app developers use to build on Celo, and then our flagship mobile application, Velora, which is a really easy to use mobile wallet. And we really took inspiration from how things are done at Apple. Apple is well known for developing kind of software and hardware at the same time, allowing it to create kind of unique experiences that are difficult to replicate if you're just building on both sides of the stack in isolation. And so we wanted to replicate that in kind of the blockchain space. And so as we built the platform, we built Velora, and any learnings that we had from that experience, we put into furthering the actual platform itself to make it easier to build on top of. And the end result is, we built something that we think is really, really quite compelling, especially if you're looking to build on mobile. And so, you might be asking, why should we build on Celo? There's a lot of different layer ones out there. And really, when people ask me this question, I usually respond with this chart. This is showing you the number of mobile devices with active mobile subscriptions in the world, as determined by the Ericsson Mobility Report. Everything before 2020 is based on past data, and everything to the right of that is a projection by the Ericsson Mobility Report. And it's pretty exciting to see. Last year, we crossed 8 billion active mobile devices in the world. And this year, we crossed 6 billion active smartphones in the world. That is just a staggering number. And what's even more, I think, exciting is if you look all the way to 2025 on the right, you can see that connectivity is improving a lot, and by 2025, all but 17% of people will have access to LTE or 5G connectivity, which is just really, really exciting to see. And so, with that in mind, we built Velora. Velora is our, as I mentioned before, our flagship mobile wallet. And it makes it just really, really easy to send and receive value in a fully permissionless manner. And so we tried really hard to recreate the user experience of things like Venmo or PayPal, but in a fully permissionless manner. And the reason we were able to do that is because of three really exciting technical innovations on the platform. Number one, Celo has a built-in stablecoin platform that allows the Celo community to launch new stablecoins that are all backed by the same over-collateralized crypto asset reserve. And I think critically, and this is also unique to Celo, you can actually pay for transaction fees with these assets. And that creates this nice user experience. If you want to send some Celo dollars to a friend, you can pay for that transaction fee in Celo dollars. This feature is actually available to any ERC20-like token on Celo. So if you're thinking of adding a token to the platform, then through on-chain governance, you can get it whitelisted for use as a gas currency, so that people can pay for transaction fees with it, which is just really, really makes things really, really easy. Next, you can send currency to phone numbers. This is something that is also, I think, very unique to us, and something that came out of this full stack approach that we took. And this really, I think, from a usability perspective, is really nice. So if we go back and look at this home screen, you can see that there's names here on these transactions. Those names are coming from your contact list because when you're sending these payments, you're sending them to phone numbers, and then you can map those phone numbers to contacts in your phone, allowing you to see names, allowing you to see profile photos, all in a privacy-preserving, permissionless manner. And I think really critically, if you want to send the payment to someone who hasn't yet signed up, on Bitcoin, on Ethereum, you can't do that right now. You need a public-private key pair, or this recipient needs a public-private key pair. And one of the things that this design allows us to do on Celo is to actually enable that flow. So you can send the payment to someone before they sign up, and then the funds go to an escrow smart contract, and then they can redeem those funds when they verify their phone number in a fully permissionless manner using the platform. And then finally, I think no no mobile-first approach in the space would be complete without a very efficient light client. And so Celo has a really efficient light client that uses kind of three kind of new innovations. Number one, Celo uses epoch-based syncing, which means that in the proof-of-stake protocol, the validator set can only change once per day. And this allows light clients to only have to download one header per day in order to sync. And so this gives us a really big speed up already. We use BLS signature aggregation, which is another interesting technique for aggregating lots of signatures into a single multi-sig that's of constant size. That gives us a nice big speed up as well. And then since we wanted really the experience to be extremely snappy for anybody opening up a mobile device, we wanted them to be able to sync with the chain near instantly. We worked really hard to incorporate ZK snarks as well into the whole system. So with ZK snarks, you can create these non-interactive proofs that prove some arbitrary computation. And so in our case, we can prove kind of the light client computation. And then a light client can simply download this proof, verify it in constant time, and then be off to the races. And so this is using kind of the Plumo part of Celo, which is coming soon, which is really exciting. Another thing that frequently comes up, it came up in the last cohort, people are asking about kind of Celo's scalability. It makes sense if you're looking on Ethereum, you're seeing high gas prices, you're seeing a lot of transactions that take forever to get mined. It's not a great environment to be building a dApp or to be building products on top of. And so the good news is that Celo is proof of stake based, and it has a very fast proof of stake protocol, consensus protocol. In effect, we have people lock up some Celo and then use that Celo to vote for validators. And then those validators perform PBFT consensus, which can be very, very quick. And so this allows very short block times. Right now, we're starting with 5-second block times, but we can actually shorten that over time. And then, we touched upon the light client. It turns out that light clients are actually very relevant to scalability as well. If you look at this chart, this is kind of from earlier this year, showing you what the kind of Bitcoin and Ethereum chain sizes are. If you were to increase the kind of throughput of the Ethereum network, then this chain would grow kind of at a faster clip. And that's problematic to people who want to kind of participate in running the protocol, especially full nodes, downloading 337 gigabytes and then processing every transaction since the beginning of the network. That's a lot of effort just to kind of join the network. And so Ethereum has this kind of thing called fast sync, where you only download the headers and then and the actual current storage try from someone else, and then you verify that try is correct by checking all of the headers using the light client protocol. But on Ethereum, the light client protocol still requires you to download 5 gigs of data just to get to the current most recent header. And so imagine if Ethereum had, I don't know, shorter block periods, say it was 100 times more scalable, then those 5 gigs of headers could become 500 gigs of headers. That's clearly too much to download from someone joining the network, even using this so-called fast mode. And so having a very efficient light client, turns out, is actually really important for scalability as well. And so it's another big win for Celo. And then the final thing that frequently comes up, one reason that Ethereum doesn't increase their block size is because they're looking at this chart and they're worried that these full nodes just will leave the platform And that's a shame because it really limits the amount of kind of decentralization that exists in the community. And it just becomes more and more expensive to operate these full nodes, the more and more chain data there is. And so Celo addresses this by creating kind of full node incentives. In effect, you can actually make money by running a full node by servicing like clients. And the way you do that is by getting a cut of the transaction fees that these like clients are creating. And so if you forward a transaction from a like client to the peer-to-peer kind of network, you can make some money. And that's really it's a new and interesting way of addressing this issue around scalability and the balance of decentralization. I mentioned that we're working on kind of Plumo. I figured it might be interesting for folks, if they're interested, to see what's next in Q4. We can talk about this more in the AMA. And then, I think many people are probably also interested in how to build on Celo. And so Josh can talk more about that in a bit. But, definitely big call out to kind of docs.celo.org where you can see a lot of our documentation. And so with that, just wanted to thank you and turn it over to the kind of AMA portion of this session.
All right, thank you, Marek. Okay, so I see that we have a bunch of questions coming in already. And the first one is it possible to use Solidity to write and deploy smart contracts on Celo?
Yeah, excellent question. And that's one thing that I didn't mention just now. Celo is fully EVM compatible. It's actually implemented as a fork of Go Ethereum. And so this means that down to the last hard fork, Celo is supports everything that you can do on Ethereum. So that means absolutely you can use Solidity, you can deploy Solidity smart contracts, and there pretty much isn't any feature that you might be used to on Ethereum that isn't supported on Celo. And I think this is in stark contrast to some other kind of new layer ones that are claiming Solidity support, but when you look under the covers, you realize that they're either interpreting the EVM inside another EVM, so it becomes kind of slow, or that they don't support the same signature schemes and the same type of cryptography. And so with Celo, you get 100% compatibility, and we worked really hard to ensure that, and we're working really hard to ensure that that continues in the future with subsequent Ethereum hard forks.
Our next question is, are there any NFT projects launched on Celo?
Yeah, great question. So I know that there are some gaming companies that are building on Celo right now. There are ones that are focused really on the mobile use case. And so I think they have some NFTs kind of built into those games. But in terms of an NFT platform, I think, Josh, maybe you've come across something like that. I'm not sure if I've seen it yet.
Yeah, I know there are teams working on exploring NFTs and what they would look like on Celo. And it's very similar, like Marek said, to what they're like on Ethereum. But I don't know of any projects that are actually launched on Celo currently on the Celo mainnet. So.
All right. For our third question, how will Celo be faster and cheaper than Ethereum?
Yeah, really excellent question. And so I think it really comes down to that consensus protocol that I just kind of glossed over real quick. By using proof of stake, you can have much, much shorter block times than you can with proof of work. And then by having a really efficient like client protocol, you can have bigger blocks than Ethereum because it becomes easier for full nodes to sync with the chain, to come and go from the network. And then finally, because Celo has full node incentives, you have kind of another incentive for full nodes to stick around even as the chain data grows significantly. And so the answer is, we can beat Ethereum simply by having more frequent blocks and bigger blocks. And we can do that because we have all of this interesting work that still maintains decentralization, even in the presence of those bigger blocks and more frequent blocks. And this actually means that it's quite easy for us, even though we launched with fairly conservative kind of throughput numbers to begin with, it's actually quite easy for us to increase the block size and to decrease the block time such that we can get to kind of Visa scale throughput. And so if you're interested in doing something that requires a lot of transactions per second, I think definitely highly recommend Celo over something like Ethereum. Like we've thought really hard and long to make the scalability kind of be there and perform for you as and when your throughput grows.
So can we expect an API for the Valora wallet that would allow merchants to generate invoices for unique users, much similar to the Coinbase API?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So is that something like the Coinbase Commerce API? Is that what you're referring to?
Mario, if you want, you can comment on there and elaborate on your question.
If so, I think the answer is, yes, we want this. In fact, we're kicking off kind of a community hackathon today. And one of the ideas that I wanted to pitch and actually work on this week is to build a Stripe-like API for Celo. So similar to Coinbase Commerce, but something that also allows subscriptions and all the awesome things that Stripe offers. So I think it's coming. Of course, one of the last Celo Camp cohort participants, MugglePay, also has been working hard on this particular problem as well. So I highly recommend checking them out as well.
For our next question, is the mobile number identity tied to specific operators, or rather, is it agnostic?
Yeah, so the identity protocol is built at the platform layer, which means that it's both agnostic to kind of the wallet that someone's using and to the operator that they're using. And this is really cool, right? This means that it doesn't matter which wallet someone's using, doesn't matter which country they're in. If they have access to a phone number that they can receive text messages to, they can verify their phone number and make it so that other people can find them really easily by their phone number. And this is why actually if some telcos are exploring building on top of Celo right now, I think telcos do a lot of things with phone numbers as identifiers. And so, it's definitely a very compelling feature of the platform.
So for our next question, I want to run Aragon for voting about money. Voting in mainnet is somehow too expensive. Celo, Fuse, or Matic is the best platform for this. Why?
I'm going to try to open that question and see if I can grok it better. So is the question, can you run something on Celo, or do you need to use a layer 2? run this particular kind of set of voting operations? Is that the question?
Victor, you can comment on your question if you'd like. We can also move on to the next one, and then once he comments, we can go back to it.
Sounds good.
Okay, so the next question, what Oracle frameworks are available to developers with Celo? Are there any plans for a partnership integration between Chainlink and Celo?
Yeah, really great question. So absolutely, I think Chainlink is excited about our platform, and has had talked to us about bringing their Oracle service onto the platform. I think it's very, very interesting. I think it will happen eventually, and so highly recommend lobbying them to make that happen. Band protocol is another one of these that last year even created a bunch of oracles that they maintained for Celo Camp participants. So I should say in the last cohort. And so that's another option. I'm not sure, Rachel, if they're also participating this year, or this cohort.
Band, I believe so.
Yeah, so they're another really great option. And then Celo also maintains its own oracle for its stability mechanism that brings the price of Celo on chain. And so if you're interested in building a dApp that needs the price of Celo, then you get that for free already on the platform. So yeah, in short, there's the Celo oracle, there's Band protocol, which is participating in this cohort as a service for Celo Camp participants, and then I think Chainlink will hopefully come at some point in the future as well.
So as Alon commented, Band is an official partner of the camp, so they will definitely be joining us. Okay, so for our next question, what is Celo's goal? Oh, it just disappeared. I don't know where that one went, so we'll have to go to the next one. How does CUSD work in regards to legal laws?
Let me read that question again. How does CUSD work in regards to legal laws? Yeah, great question. So CUSD is stable, which means that it, in most jurisdictions, does not look like a security. So a lot of the kind of securities-related laws that typically have kind of been a concern for crypto projects aren't applicable, and so that's really good news for people using CUSD. Of course, there are money transmission and laws and guidelines by FATF that the U.S. puts out, which then many countries go ahead and implement. And if you read those guidelines, then in most countries right now, if you have a unhosted wallet, which is like the Valora wallet or any other wallet that kind of maintains the keys for you in a non-custodial way, those wallets are exempt from your typical kind of money transmission kind of obligations and laws. And so right now, you're free in most legal jurisdictions to use something like CUSD and transact freely and build kind of projects and businesses on top of it without the need for those extra kind of requirements that exist in kind of the more traditional either e-money or just fiat kind of world. Now, of course, things could change in the future, and we're constantly looking at the kind of guidelines that FATF and FinCEN are putting out. We have a really great head of compliance who even is based out in DC and is even kind of talking to those regulators and even giving feedback for kind of future directions that they may take. And so, yeah, if there's any kind of update, then I think we'll definitely let folks know. But right now, I think, in most legal jurisdictions, we're in the clear. And then I think there was a follow-up about the SEC treating all tokens like securities, which doesn't work well for stablecoins. I think everyone has to kind of take their own risk assessment of this. But there's now a lot of compelling evidence that Celo itself is not a security, and CUSD being a stablecoin likewise. And so, yeah, I think, I'm not sure where you're getting your information from, but I would definitely double check that.
So for our next question, it's from Marco. Oh, they keep on disappearing because they're being voted on. When will it be possible to earn interest on CUSD? I lost it again.
Yeah, really great.
There we go.
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. The easiest way to earn interest in CUSD is to have a kind of a healthy lending marketplace on Celo where people can lend out CUSD and other people can borrow CUSD and maybe collateralize it with Celo. We've seen some of that work out in kind of the DeFi space on Ethereum, and there's some really compelling projects on Ethereum that we're chatting with that might in the future launch on Celo. And I think that could be a point in time when you'd be able to do this. Of course, if anybody here is interested in building that marketplace, that's a really exciting and massive opportunity as well. And so definitely encourage people to think about that. But yeah, I think in general, we built a platform, we built a mobile app and the SDK, but we can't build every kind of use case that we want to see on top of Celo. And so, this is really an opportunity for everyone here to think about, whether or not that this is a compelling product to bring to billions of mobile phones worldwide. And I would imagine the answer to that is yes.
For our next question, if Celo uses SMS to verify phone numbers, how vulnerable is it to SIM swap or social engineering attacks at mobile operators?
Yeah, really great question. So I think the answer is that it's as vulnerable as every other centralized app that uses these services, but because these things are well known, we worked really hard to make sure that your funds are never at risk if someone steals your phone number and verifies your phone number. So your funds are always secured with a private key that is generated and lives in the secure enclave on your phone. And so even if someone SIM swaps you, at most they can try to impersonate you going forward. They can't spend your existing funds. But even there, we worked hard. If we notice that there's two accounts tied to the same phone number because someone stole your phone number and then registered a new account, then we warn users sending you money. so that you are less likely, so that that type of attack is less likely to succeed. And so, yeah, we worked hard to make it so that our customers' funds are always, or I should say, Valora users' funds are always safe, even if someone were to steal your phone number.
For our next question, can we full transfer an ERC20 token to Celo blockchain and build smart contracts for exchange data with Chainlink also?
Okay, I'm going to take a look at that question again. Can we transfer an ERC20 token to the Celo blockchain and build smart contracts for exchanging data with Chainlink? So I think for the first part of that question, the answer is soon. So maybe some folks have seen this. Celo or cLabs acquired a company called Suma, which has been thinking about and building bridges for a number of years now. They're one of the leading kind of experts in this space. And that team now is working on creating a bridge to Ethereum. I mentioned that we have a hard fork coming up. One of the things in that hard fork will be to introduce some precompiles that will make it easier for us to complete that bridge. Once that bridge is complete, you'll be able to move ERC20 tokens over from Ethereum onto Celo. And I think one thing that is pretty exciting, at least for me, is that we can make this bridge work in a trustless capacity. One of the nice things about having a very efficient light client is that you can actually run that light client code in a smart contract, which then means that you don't have to kind of trust any third party to kind of custody your assets for you as you kind of move them over. And so definitely keep an eye out for that. I think it'll probably take something close to half a year before we launch that, but we're working really, really hard to make that happen soon.
Okay, so for our next question, can you guys talk more about the variation of POS that you're using, and what are the possible attack vectors there? What's the number of voting validators, and how do you make sure that there are no conspiracies and alliances amongst validators?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you can think of Celo's proof of stake protocol as maybe a hybrid between Cosmos and what Polkadot is doing. So in Cosmos, you vote for kind of on the order of 100 validators, and then based on how many votes each of these validators got, that determines the weight that the validators have in the PBFT consensus. And so long as no more than 2/3 of the overall kind of weighted kind of validators are colluding, then the network has kind of safety guarantees, and those colluding parties won't be able to kind of create a fork or roll back transactions or do other things, similar to kind of the 51% kind of threshold for proof of work. Now, in parity, it's, I think, similar, but you pick multiple validators, and then the end result is that each validator has the same kind of weight. And so the idea is that there's this kind of interesting optimization function that they use to accomplish that. But the end result is that you have to go out there and find kind of multiple validators that you trust and you think would be kind of honest and would work well in the ecosystem. And so we thought that yeah, both of these approaches had some downsides. And so where we settled on instead is we like the idea of having every validator have equal weight. I think that promotes decentralization, that makes it less likely that a small number of parties can get up to that 67% weight. And so the way we do this is we added an extra level of indirection. Instead of voting for validators, you vote for validator groups. Validator groups then add multiple validators to their group. And then we use the Hans algorithm, which is kind of a well-known election algorithm, to then elect those validators from the votes on these validator groups. And the nice thing about this is you can actually make validator groups do some of the kind of due diligence on these validators to make it less onerous for people voting. And then finally, I think the way that all of these proof of stake networks really incentivize against kind of 2/3 of validators colluding together is by having a pretty big stick that they employ if these folks were to do this. And this is something that doesn't exist in proof of work networks. If 2/3 of validators were to collude and were to create a new fork, maybe to do a double spend attack, then that fork would be easily detected, and those validators would get slashed. And so they would have a pretty expensive cost associated with it. And so this is kind of the big argument in proof of stake networks as to why they're more secure than proof of work networks. You have both positive incentives, so people make money by participating in the protocol going forward, but you also have negative incentives if they misbehave. And by having this extra level of indirection, having these validator groups, we can actually make validator groups bond their Celo for much longer periods of time than would be reasonable to ask for just a regular validator. And this means that they are on the hook for a longer period of time if someone misbehaves. And so they really have a really strong incentive to, if they're running their own validators, not misbehave, and if they're taking on other validators into their group, to really vet them properly. So right now, the unbonding time for validator groups is half a year. I think that's the longest kind of subjectivity window of any proof of stake chain right now. And again, this really makes that stick really quite effective, which is kind of the main incentive for people not to collude.
So for our next question, our current dApp supports Ethereum mainnet via web3.js. Thinking about Celo support, do you think maintaining a single dApp for both networks does make sense? Or would it be easier to maintain a fork to make better use of all of Celo's enhancements?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think it probably depends on the dApp, and Josh, feel free to chime in here as well. I think if you could benefit from Celo's stable currencies, or if you could benefit from having your transaction fees be covered by an ERC20 token instead of kind of the native asset on both Ethereum and Celo, then maybe there could be some incentives to do something bespoke for Celo. But if you're not doing those things, then it's probably fine to keep the same code base and just deploy on both. Celo has its own, or Celo supports Web3 and has a provider that you can kind of inject that allows you to be able to sign transactions locally as well, if that's important to you. So I think you should be able to kind of keep the same code base pretty easily. The one thing I might add, though, is that maybe the kind of Solidity side of things might stay the same. But if you are building kind of a web app for people to access that kind of dApp, I might encourage you to consider building a mobile application as well, using kind of dApp Kit. And the reason for that is you'll have access to a lot more potential customers, and kind of the potential to reach those 6 billion smartphones. And arguably, depending on what your dApp does, it could be that the people on mobile devices may find your work more valuable. And so dAppKit is built in mind with people who are moving from kind of the traditional web app space. And so it uses something called Expo, which makes it quite easy to build native applications using kind of React and standard web kind of frameworks. And so definitely encourage you to check that out.
Yeah, and just to add to that, our contract kit does include Web3.js in the package. So because Celo and Ethereum are so similar, if your engineers are experienced developing on Ethereum, it can be relatively, well, it is easy to deploy onto Celo. And as Marek said, depending on what your dApp is doing, it may make sense to just have a different deployment flow for Celo versus Ethereum. And then one of the bigger differences is how users are probably going to interact with Celo. We're mobile first. So yeah, as Marek said, the dApp kit is built to help people access the blockchain through a mobile experience. And I think that's something that Ethereum doesn't do very well. So if you're building a mobile dApp, it would make sense to fork.
So that's actually all the time we have for questions, because I would love for Josh to turn the floor over to you to speak about Celo developer tools. Mark, thank you so much for answering all these great questions, really great questions with wonderful answers as well. So I'm gonna, Josh, you don't have any slides, right?
Oh, I'm just gonna share a sheet. In the
share
chat.
a sheet? Okay.
Yep, and this is just a sheet I put together with a lot of the developer tools. Some of them we've mentioned, some of them I'll just introduce. But there's links to the docs or like relevant info in the sheet. So I'm just gonna like talk through these things. And then if you guys have any questions about any of these tools, feel free to join the Discord at chat.celo.org. And Marek and I are both on there regularly. And if your questions didn't get answered, yeah, feel free to ask in Discord, because we have a lot of our engineers hang out there too. So we'll answer those. So yeah, just jumping into the developer tools. We mentioned Contract Kit a few times. Contract Kit is a JavaScript package of Celo blockchain utilities. So it helps you manage connections to the Celo blockchain, manage accounts, send transactions, and interact with smart contracts. And we also have a set of wrappers around our core protocol smart contracts. That these are mostly related to governance, validator actions, our on-chain exchange with CUSD and Celo, things like that. So it just makes interacting with the chain easier. And we just talked about dAppKit a little bit. This helps build good mobile experiences, so you can focus on building your mobile dApp. And you don't have to worry about account management or handling private keys. You can leave that to the Valora wallet or another Celo wallet that maybe a community member has built. So the idea is keys are managed in the Valora wallet, and then dAppKit will just defer transaction requests to one of these wallets to sign and send transactions or interact with a smart contract or whatever it may be. And we have an example application there built on one of our test nets with the dAppKit truffle box. We also have Forno, which is an Infura-like service, if you're familiar with Ethereum development, which is just an open service for node access. So you can connect your dApp to the Celo blockchain, and you don't have to worry about running a node infrastructure. So and Contract Kit is super easy to connect to Forno. It's just one line, and you can connect to Celo mainnet or any of our test nets. Marek mentioned Valora, which is our cLabs mobile wallet. This is a complement to DAppKit, so it's doing key management. It provides a nice, clean, intuitive UI where users can send transactions and interact with smart contracts, so you don't have to worry about wallet development. Otis is the lightweight identity layer that Marek was talking about. This is one of the coolest things I think about the Celo blockchain. So it makes it really easy to send cryptocurrency to a phone number. And we have packages in the contract kit that make it easy to look up accounts associated with phone numbers. So you can just do this all programmatically. We also have block explorers for the AlphaHorizon testnet, also the Baklava testnet and mainnet. This is really useful for when you're developing applications to verify transactions are going through, looking up smart contracts that are on chain, protocol contracts, or contracts that you're deploying yourself. Stats.celo.org is an excellent website that I reference regularly. This is more for like protocol level, just seeing about the health of the network, seeing how quickly blocks are being produced. You can check like gas price. You can look at the list of validators, their signing rate. So if they're missing blocks, all these things. This is more for protocol. Type inspection. I mentioned the AlphaHorizon testnet. This is a testnet that's just like mainnet, but you can get free testnet Celo and CUSD from our faucet. Forno also supports connections to AlphaHorizon, so you can develop your application on the AlphaHorizon testnet. We also have an AlphaHorizon Celo wallet, which is separate from Valora. Valora is connecting to mainnet by default, so you're using real funds, real Celo and real CUSD. The AlphaHorizon wallet is no longer in the App Store, so if you want to test the mobile applications connecting to the AlphaHorizon testnet, please reach out to support@cLabs.co. And then you can get an APK or the appropriate package to install on your testing mobile device. We also have the Baklava testnet, which is more for validators and for testing protocol changes. So you guys might not be using this testnet, but just be aware that it exists. And if you want to test things more protocol related, Baklava is where you'll go. And we mentioned throughout this talk similarities between Celo and Ethereum. So this means you can use many of the most popular Ethereum developer tools. And Celo supports EVM. So tools for writing smart contracts in Solidity or any language that compiles to EVM bytecode are compatible with Celo. So that means ERC20 tools, NFT tools, and other smart contract interface standards are supported. Celo is a separate layer 1, so they're not automatically transferable between chains, but as Marek mentioned, we're working hard on bridges to make this possible. Some of the most common Ethereum tools that I've used in conjunction with Celo are Truffle. Open Zeppelin contracts are compatible because those are all mostly in Solidity. You can use Remix, which is a Solidity IDE. And if you point that to a Celo node that you're running locally, you can do a lot of the Remix actions directly from your Remix IDE. If you guys explore this, feel free to reach out to me because Remix was built for Ethereum, so there are some nuances to using it, but you can do a lot of really cool things with it. And we also have some really cool things in the works. We are supporting community projects and grants like a Python and Java SDK. Our SDKs are written in JavaScript or TypeScript right now. So these things will be coming out soon. And we're also working on, the community is also working on a web wallet. So think about MetaMask, but for Celo, so we can access through laptop browsers and things like that. And you can dig into a lot more of this technical info at docs.celo.org. And as I mentioned, join our Discord at chat.celo.org. And I added my email here if you guys want to reach out. It's just josh@cLabs.co. If you have any questions and you want to talk to me directly, Discord or email is a good way to get a hold of me. So thanks, everybody, and I'll hand it back to Rachel.
Right. Josh, thank you so much. Thank you to both Marek and Josh for joining us today with your presentations and for the Q&A, and to our crowd for joining and asking your really great questions. We do have one more event coming up before Camp begins, and you'll definitely want to tune in for this one. Join us on October 7th for our Investors Fireside AMA. We have an incredible lineup joining us to answer your questions on fundraising. We have Ariana Simpson from Andreessen Horowitz, Ben Persick from Polychain, Ian Lee from IDEO, and Sochi Sador from cLabs. So you'll be receiving email invites to this event, and I highly encourage you to join us and start asking questions as well. And one last reminder before we go, we are almost at the deadline for CeloCamp applications, which is open till October 5th, and you can apply at celocamp.com. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Marek and Josh, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Rachel, for everything. And go CeloCamp.
All right. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.